Good morning. I got a bunch of people sitting around the table with me here today. Let's go around and let's get a shout out from them and let's see who they are and what they bring to the set. Let's start with you over there, my young brother and partner in crime, constantly always by my side on these podcast assassinations. What do we got? Who we got down there?
Yeah, so I want to introduce Lynn Rouse. He is the founder of the African American XY Program LLC. His organization, a budding software development firm, supports youth and parents, focusing on education, career, and lifestyle. He is a long-time education advocate, particularly in the field of African American males, beginning his professional career as the office manager of an alternative classroom facility for at-risk students. He continues his advocacy as a cultural navigator for an education-centered organization, providing youth with the journey through the African American experience. Welcome, Mims.
Welcome. Well, that was a heck of an introduction. Is that all? Who is you? Welcome to the house. But we got a couple other cats coming around here.
Very much.
Ma'am, some of my partners is also sitting around. Welcome, Mims. We're going to chop it up with Mims here.
Okay.
But we got two other cats sitting at the table with us, too. Y'all take a minute to introduce yourselves to our listener base.
Well, I mean, y'all seen me a few times before. I'm Jarrell. Do marketing, digital marketing, social media here. Also, part of John's posse, trying to make things pop. So, yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex. I am the business navigator here at the Seoul District Business Association. Prior to this, I've got about 15 years in the banking and finance industry, and my role pretty much here, to put it in a nutshell, is to help you start a business, or if you've got a business, help you navigate through the complex systems, as John always says, and figure out how to make it dance.
Well, welcome, yo, Mims, and welcome, man. This session, I just wanted to chop it up with you a little bit, man, about, I know you ain't no stranger to the game of things that are going on in the education system, but pretty much so primarily, man, I'm just concerned about what's going on with our young African-American men and young folks that are in the school district these days, man. I mean, but there were so many other topics that are going on in the world today, man. It's like this thing going on in Tennessee. What y'all think about that? Before we get to that one, man, just real quickly, let's drop it. Man, they got this cats in there, man, where it's a young African-American brother on a police chase. They catch up with him, and the first thing I hear on CNN later on is that 5 police beat a young African-American male like he's a piñata. Mm-hmm. And I found it rather interesting that they used the piñata word in it, but the fact of the matter is the young African-American male died as a result of that engagement.
Right.
Now, there is this conversation down on the table about these 5 African-American officers that have beat this young cat to death. But they were saying, I heard some statements and some things said where they talk about, well, it's not so much the color of the skin when it comes to how African-American males, young males out there in the streets are being treated by law enforcement. It's like a MO or something. It's like you come into training, you become a police officer, and the first thing in your training, somehow it like targets you to just go after this young male, this African-American male, and treat him unjustly. What y'all think about that, man? I mean, isn't this some crazy shit that's going on with this? What's up with this? What y'all thoughts about that one?
Yeah, for me, John, when you say crazy, for me, crazy is irrational. And this isn't irrational. Growing up, we heard a lot about systems, and don't get caught up in the system. And you're probably from that generation as well, right?
Sure. Mom used to always say, boy, a hard head make a soft behind. And that man sitting up on that bench with that hammer is going to have the last word. She'll always tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today when we think of a system, we think about electronics. And really the system isn't so much electronics, it's protocol, it's policy and procedure. And so these cops are simple agents of the system. And if they didn't do what the system required them to do, then they would be terminated.
Wow. That's a
yeah.
hell of a view, and you're hitting it on the head.
Yeah, well, and for me, it's so when we use the word crazy, I say no. This is very much rational when you consider the system that's at play, and until we disrupt the system, then we can expect a continuation of this for more generations. And I think for me, education also includes helping students recognize what's at play, because many times they're lulled into believing that there is no system, or they're not even cognizant of the fact that there is a system.
Wow, that is that's a unique. What y'all think about that approach to how Mims laid that down?
Well, after hearing them out, I think what you're saying is it's a systemic problem. This is just showing how the system is at play, and because when first you said it's not irrational, I was like, what?
Yeah, I saw your reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But there's a deeper meaning to this, and there's a deeper meaning to all these things that are happening. So that was a really good perspective.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, whenever you use a word like system, I always have to ask myself, is this a system that's designed on purpose? So there's somebody, or there's an entity or a group of people behind the scenes that have a specific system in place and figuring out how it's going to go? Or is this something that we created, but it's not working well? We just can't figure out how to make it go the right way, right? And then two, I don't even know if there's someone we can compare it to, but is there an ideal system that we can talk about and say, that's working well over there, and then, what are the issues behind that?
Well, historically, the United States was founded on slavery. And what we forget is that we forget that fact. And like I said, we're lulled in believing that when you get rid of a word, that the policies and procedures, the culture also disappears. And that's not fact. So the system that was in place during slavery is the same system that's in place now. It's embedded in American culture. And so for me, I think we're crazy to believe that we can get any other result than the one that we're getting now, because we haven't completely dismantled that race-based thinking. And so for me, it's those policies, procedures, culture is just still in effect. And one of the things I challenge people to do is to think back in history. When was there a time that the African American was equal in every way to white folks here in the United States? And
I can't think of a time.
Right, and so what many folks want us to do is believe
but we specifically talking about. We specifically talk about no. We specifically talk about America, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And I would like to say this, John, is that the United States was so good, or is so good at what it does, that a lot of countries patterned their policies and procedures off the United States. They sent delegations to the United States to study how the United States operated and kept its Negroes in check. And this was well after slavery. So for me, it is a palpable, living, breathing thing. And going to your point about systemic, for me, I caution people to really interrogate and examine the words, because what we'll start doing is that we will focus on just the word and not the actions behind the word. And and as we talk, I'll think more about how, what my belief is about, what my belief is on that. But if we're not careful, what we'll start doing is we won't bring in the actual agents who maintain this system. We'll say it's systemic, and not hold people accountable.
Yeah, man, the more you talk, not to go sideways, but something just keeps from a philosophy class that I had in school. It made me think about Hobbes. And, them cats, Plato, Socrates, Hobbes, and all that. And I think it was Hobbes that wrote something about a new man. And how a society always considers a new man. And when, in fact, as a new man awaits a new society, as a new society awaits a new man. And so it seems to me like when I think about what you were saying, this is what I'm hearing, not just these words like systemic and all those other things, but what I'm hearing is the condition that was set forth and the precedence that was set forth for the African American or the black in this country. Its DNA and its destiny, the formula, the way it's established is established, and the trajectory is established to get us to where we are today. Okay, so here we are, we've landed. We've landed to where we got black police officers now doing exactly what Jim Crow and all them other people set precedence for us to be doing, and that is to maintenance ourselves, like the overseer, or like the one parolee or something, the trustee in the jailhouse, the black trustee that oversees the other black inmates, this kind of thing. So now we have these 5 black police officers getting ready to get put up on charge. So what I'm hearing, so it sounds to me like they ain't even guilty. So it sounds to me like they're just indoctrinated into a system that is already perpetrating these offenses upon us regardless. So it doesn't matter if they employ a damn robot, it's still going to have the DNA to do what is that if the young black male decides to bolt and take off running, them dogs is set loose. And when they catch him, it's just that whole adrenaline, whole rush, that whole idea, and that is, one brother catch a brother, because I think it was Lombardi and a few of the other cats that said it takes a rabbit to catch a rabbit.
Yeah, for me, it's we live in an age to a certain degree of anti-intellectualism. You will start speaking intellectually about things, and people will say, "You're doing the most." Right? And they will attempt to dismiss what you're saying. And when really we should be leading with science. And science really is knowledge, things that have been proven. And psychology is a science. And so there's a psychology behind why the cops did what they did. There's sociological principles that govern how the cops behaved. Like you were saying, John, regardless of their race and their background, what have you. And so for me, it's let's bring everything to bear. Let's bring everything front and center to examine this thing. In my perfect world, there's a round table on the state of African Americans in the United States. And in that round table, you have people from all disciplines. You got the psychologists, you got the medical MD who can tell you about, the practical medical side of where we are. You know, you have the economist, you know, you have the business person, you have all people coming together to put together these parts and to really examine where we are. And
So where you think we at, man?
for me, honestly, I believe that, you know, the system is still doing what it does, and for me, it's more suave. It's more
It's
covert.
more sophisticated.
It's
as you
more
say.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty much the same that it was immediately post-slavery. You still walk in neighborhoods, and you know, I read somewhere that says black skin is an affront to white America. Just being black, you're challenging white America. When you walk into those white spaces without opening your mouth, without saying a word, you're challenging them. And I've seen myself, you know, I've witnessed it myself, walking into a space and I'm standing and folks will bump into me.
Yeah. Sometimes
I haven't moved.
you know, that's an amazing thing, because you did point out something. Because I actually did a study of this. It's like I used to ask people all the time, do white people have an affliction to saying "excuse me"? It's like that word, like or they may say it amongst themselves, but I ain't never had a white person ever bump into me and say the word "excuse me," or "I'm sorry."
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
And it's the most fascinating thing I find, and it actually makes me a little bit more aggressive in some ways. You know, this motherfucker. You know, but anyway, it's like
But you know, Mims, like, so whenever this topic comes up, I always, for some reason, I always fall back into this, and I think my theme phrase for the year, John, is going to be navigating systems. Is so post-slavery, we started seeing a lot of ideological movements amongst African Americans for wanting to nationalize, right? So we started to have a lot of people like Marcus Garvey and those that came before him and after him, wanting to basically create our own communities, our own, you know, education, our own police system, our own towns, whatever. I mean, all the way up to Malcolm X, who was at one point talking about just creating our own separate country within the United States, right? So when we talk about navigating systems, would it be better if there was just our own, I guess, our own community that we could govern ourselves in, or would it have been better for us to continue to try and navigate within this melting pot that is America? And so when we talk about that system that you're talking about, does the difficulty come in because of the integration that we decided to go through with, or would it have been better to not have integrated?
You know, growing up, and
that's deep. I mean,
that's the big topic that's coming up right now, where people say the integration.
I thought reparations was the one that was the topic that was covered up, but it sounds like we ain't gonna get to that.
You know, I think that it's really all the above. You know, it's reparations, and what you would call reparations, I would call restorative justice.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fact. So the United States has laws, and it will, working with the federal government, I've learned that it's really all in how that law is interpreted, right? And so it's a known fact that, I mean, in law, if you damage someone in any way, you owe them restitution. You have an obligation to make them whole. And we abandoned that law when it comes to African Americans, because
that's America's only number one black eye. No matter where he or it will go in the world, and you know, and in most places, I mean, we even looked at this the World Cup situation, right? Over there in the country that it was, and what came as a result of how we entered into that space. you know, that space, talking about how they treated their women and all that.
And Qatar.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Qatar. And I think the funniest thing is their response. And it's the same response all over the world, is that, how dare you come in here and talk to us about how dare you come in there and talk to us about how we treat our people when you can't discuss how you treat your own. You know, and all over the world, that's his black eye. But I would assume, okay, so let's say I'm trying to change, right? Let's see, because it's something Alex always trying to kick around all the time. He always say, well, how come this discussion about with black people and that, it always turns into a negative conversation, right? It's like, woe is me, like somebody getting masked on, pushed on. And I don't think America looks at us, and to me, at least for me, America looks at us and goes, well, you know, we would probably give them a whole lot more respect if they fought for what it was that they wanted, right? Mm-hmm. And we looking at it going, well, you know, well, they done whooped us down. There's more of them. They got bigger guns. They got more this, that, whatever. But the point of the matter is that a new society awaits a new man as a new man awaits a new society, right? So let's see, how do we as young people, because most of y'all are younger than me at the table, and y'all have insight and views and perspective. And I think Alex made a really interesting point by asking, did integration really help us or hurt us? In terms of that overall formula that you're looking at, in terms of the systemic woes that we experience, right? But is that so much that integration affected us in terms of our disposition, but more so affected us in the way we see ourselves in relationship to how they see us?
Well, you know, John, to go back to one point you made about not respecting someone who won't fight back.
Right.
That's a basic American principle, is that we love aggression.
Right.
And we vote on our presidents based on how aggressive they will be. We vote on our mayors, governors, you know, when they come in and they say, you know, at one point we started using the word czar for different leaders of different movements. And so that's very much an American way of living. For me, like I was telling you, John, you know, we come from a time, I'm 50 years.
Did you know there's a new national broadband map? You can learn more about the internet services available in your area and help improve the maps by visiting broadbandmap.fcc.gov. Again, that's broadbandmap.fcc.gov.
Years old, and growing up, my mother was interviewed on integration, because that was the new thing when she was, you know, in her early adulthood, and she was adamantly against it. And I never understood why she would be against integration. And then I came into the knowledge of why she would be against it. Because when you look at black society, when you tell that whole story back in the day, if you needed a dentist, you sent a student to college. That student came back to the community and was that dentist, was that accountant, was that everything, banker. And so the community had people who knew that culture, knew that way of life, and could provide the services that that community needed. What integration did, particularly in teaching, was that it ruined the teaching gains that we had made. And this was an education for me. In integration, they said, okay, you're going to need to be able to pass this certain test, you're going to need these credentials, you're going to need this, that, and the third. And systematically, they reduced the number of black teachers in the black neighborhoods. And now you have white teachers, because I grew up in an all black neighborhood, and I didn't have one black teacher. I mean, I grew up in a solidly black neighborhood. I probably didn't know white people existed till I was 10 years old.
And this is, you grew up in Portland?
No, and
Okay.
I grew up in a town outside of Orlando.
Okay.
And it
Florida.
was Florida.
Mhm.
And it was your basic town where the railroad tracks separated you, right? And so we'd go across the railroad tracks briefly to go to the grocery store, but even that grocery store, the one that we went to, was all black, except for management. It was a well-to-do white family that owned that grocery store. But so for me, integration was not good for us because we never dismantled the systems that were at play. And so
So is that system the same system that you may perceive as the same curator or creator of critical race theory?
Oh, absolutely. So critical race theory, the only thing that it does really is explain the system at place. It doesn't propose anything. And so
It's more of an avoidance to me.
right,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
back to that anti-intellectualism, especially when it comes to exposing America's past. Because what we most of us know as history is folklore, it's fantasy. And critical race theory tears that to its bones and reveals what it really was. Like in politics, I'm learning that you go for those highly visible but maybe not so effective wins. And that's what integration was. It was highly visible, but it was detrimental,
Yep.
for African Americans. Because one of the things that African Americans experienced, which was different from our brethren in other colonized nations, was that we always made up a smaller number, especially post-slavery, than whites. And so there was no chance for us to really build, especially being integrated. There was no way for us to actually build because the system has a reaction to everything that you do.
But it's designed that way. I mean, as an instant response. I mean, come on, let's look at it. I mean, let's look at the bigger span, right? I mean, the response was when civil rights came, right? It was real clear that civil rights was formed for a reason. And the whole essence of the response to civil rights was this construct you're talking about, this response. But every time there's a structure set forth to somehow liberate that result, that historical result that lead us to where we are, anytime that attempt it's thawed by something, it's confronted by something. So you got civil rights, and then came diversity, right? And diversity came and it said, let's put everybody on the platform of civil rights. And they understood because simultaneously affirmative action was being attacked in one of the Ivy League schools, right? And all of a sudden, all of these things that got on that platform just seemed to just proliferate. In a 20-year span, it all proliferated. Everybody that got on the platform, female rights, LGBTQ rights, handicap rights, any other ethnic group that got onto that platform, in the 20-year span, they all proliferated to a platform that they can defend or discuss or advocate on behalf of, right? But quickly on the heels of that same thing, equity and diversity came into play. Now, hold on now, this whole process, excuse me, I may be antiquated, I might be old school, all this, but I can't breathe. You know what I'm saying? Because so much come down the pike at me at one point in time where I'm still trying to figure out how I'm getting a little bit of equity or a little bit of liberation or a little bit of something as a result of all this fighting and enduring and suffering and trauma and all that. And now all of a sudden I'm being buried with equity. Well, I don't know what your young men think about this, but perhaps y'all might, this very thing may be the end result. Because here's my thinking about this, Mims, and I want to, at the same time, I want to telecast to y'all. I want to transition at some point on this because I believe you do have your hands on some proposed solutions, okay? But I think what I'm seeing at this point in time, when we look at the history of all of this stuff, race relations and the political influences over that, and the, the semantic old narratives is what a sleight of hand. Who you believe, me or your lying ass eyes, all that kind of stuff that goes on. It just keeps coming, right? Yeah. The hits keep coming. But one thing that won't seem to go away is the fact is that there was an injustice done, and there continues to be one. Now, that's a black eye. I don't care which way you look at it. In that black eye, you will never be able to repair that black eye to those viewing you demonstrate these behaviors and characteristics. You'll never be able to just wipe that away. But the attempt is to make that issue go away. Now, that's an operative word. Now, it's one thing to address and habilitate something or even admit defeat, right? But it's another to maintain pride, dignity, at the same time dealing with one of the worst atrocities you could possibly palate for yourself and say, I'm okay. Because you're not. America's not okay. We're dealing with some hard times. I was listening to the Blind Boys from Alabama last night, and they were singing, and they were singing some church stuff. But what they were saying is, look, things is rough out there. Y'all got to get it together. Mm-hmm. So Mims, now, you also sit as the executive director of the Black Male Coalition.
Coalition of Black
Males, right? And that's actually a real fascinating intersection for you, because you have that and you have this motivation and desire to somehow or another raise the dignity and the integrity of the African American male, the black male, in education and those things. Speak to me a little bit about where we're moving, for how we're moving forward in this process in terms of those two elements you got your hand on. What do you see that's encouraging in those two environments?
So, I'd like to report that we're making great gains, in education, and we're not. It's the same old fight. I think what we're doing is we're getting more comfortable identifying the problem, but we're still not ready to really. We're still really not willing to take the pill that's needed to heal, right?
Yeah, especially if that pill is as big as that bottle over there.
To some people, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things, and when you consider white supremacy, equality to a white supremacist is pain. It's to a person who's never shared power, is punishment to now have to share power, when really it's just right. And so how do you, and we haven't, and this is why I say we really haven't made any gains, is because we really haven't. We've gotten some local power. We've gotten some power, in certain localities, like maybe some of the black towns, Atlanta. We have local power. The Hispanics have local power in Miami. The Asians have local power in San Francisco, Seattle. And so, that might feel like, but when you consider the nation,
right,
it's the same old thing. Those are bubbles.
Yeah.
So for me, it is focusing on the youth and having them understand that the same systems that were in place immediately past post-slavery are still in place now. And it's dangerous to fall under the impression or back to sleep thinking that it's all about we live under an egalitarian system, because we don't. You know, that white CEO, when he sees a white male with potential, he sees himself, and he's going to make way for that white male. And if you have a white male, young black white male, a young black male and a young white male, and the CEO is white, it's more likely that he's going to see himself in the white male, and he's going to move, make moves so that his replacement is that white male, because that's how he gets to live. Because in certain philosophies, you live through your progeny, and that's how in business it's. I would argue that it's no different.
So, Mims, you believe? Well, my sense is you've been investing some time in mentoring.
Absolutely.
And how do you see mentoring affecting this woo that we're talking about right now, and the benefit? And I also understand you're experimenting and got your hand on looking at how technology can perhaps assist us in improving some of this dilemma that we're dealing with. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So for me, it's, like I said, why not use all things that are available to us, to include technology, electronics, in the form of electronics. And so, that's one way. The youth, like I said, are key. And Hitler, that's why he focused on the youth so much. He knew that if he could groom them, that he could really execute his master plan. And I say that our master plan should continue to be equity until we reach equality. And so, let's go forward with that. Mentoring is so important because we as not just humans, but as mammals, mimicking is how we survive. I was watching this show, and it was taking place in Africa, and this woman was washing her clothes by the river, and so she took some laundry out of the river and she beat them along, on the bank, and this orangutan kind of nestled up beside her, watched what she was doing, and grabbed something, dipped it in the river, and started beating it. Kind of like, am I doing it right type of deal. And so it's very much a human trait. And so I think it's integral to the human experience, and especially key in overcoming. And if we can systematize it, if we can get buy-in on a national level, then I think that we're much more able to succeed.
Gotcha. Hey, man, well, you offer a real fascinating approach to some of these things, man, and I do appreciate the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, John.
Hey, man, how do people get involved with what you're doing, man? Let people know how they can reach you or get a hold of the organizations and the things that you're participating with.
So, the best way to reach me is on the software side. It's MIMS, MIMS.Rouse, ROUSE, at AfricanAmerican, one word, -XY.com. And, reach out to me, submit an email if you are interested in the nonprofit space that I occupy at the Coalition of Black Men and want to contribute. And I would say, living here in Portland, I believe that every black man should be a member of the Coalition of Black Men.
I agree with that.
And so that's my mission, is for them to become an active member with us. And so on that side, it's M. Rouse at clbmpdx.org, or M. Rouse at clbmportland spelled out.org, and you can reach me that way.
Oh boy, hey, look at you youngsters, you're sitting around the table, you're mesmerized. You got anything that you want to ask this man before you get off this platform?
I keep going through my head, and it's so many topics that I want to cover, but just to contribute to the last piece that you said, I'm a big believer and big proponent of mentorship. And one of my things growing up in Portland is from elementary to middle school, I would say I was really fortunate to have black teachers. Excellent. Not only black teachers, but to be in an environment where I had black administrative staff, security guards, and all that stuff in our school. And one of the people I always remember, and if he's watching this, I'll give him a shout out, is Mr. Nunn. And he, I believe he's currently a teacher. I know I saw him teaching, I think, at the university level recently, but I went to Whitaker Middle School, and for some of y'all that went there, you'll probably remember him. Either his mom or his dad was one of the first African American teachers in Portland, and one of the things that he did is he really pushed for us learning African American history throughout the year. So we always learned about this person invented this person invented this. So we always learn about things about African American inventors throughout the year, and then he always focused on African American history prior to slavery as well. So there was a history for black people prior to slavery, and I thought as a kid that was so empowering. And some of the other cool things he did is after school we would go with law offices, accountants, just different professions of Hispanic and African American professionals, and we would go spend time with them after school. And that was really, really big for me in terms of my development as a kid. So I was really fortunate. And then another guy, Mr. Brandon, that a lot of people know. He was in the school system as well. So I was really, really fortunate. So I just want to back you up on saying that yes, the mentorship does go a long way, and then your part that you said as far as the education, I'm a big proponent of that. So especially as somebody who's got 2 kids. So
absolutely. Thank you for recognizing.
You got anything here, my brother?
Yeah. First, Alex, I'm jealous of what you had because I didn't have none of that.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up, born and raised in Portland.
Okay.
So like when I was in elementary, middle school, like.
What elementary and what middle school?
I went to Beach Elementary from kindergarten to 8th grade. Most, if not all, my teachers were white.
Okay.
And then this was like when gentrification really started to hit that area. So every year, less and less minorities, less black students would be there. So then by the time I was in like 8th grade, I was like one of 2 black men in my grade. Then when I went to high school, I went to a very diverse high school, De La Salle North.
Right.
But like, which was really weird, like all my teachers were white, so like when you were saying that, I was like, that was my experience too. So like my teachers weren't really able to fully connect with us just because there was kind of like that barrier and stuff. But it was like, it wasn't too bad because they were still trying to help, but it was kind of just like they couldn't fully give us the support we needed because it was, they would come from all these like prestigious high schools and stuff, then to come teach here like a whole different thing. Like we needed entirely different resources, entirely different forms of support, which they just didn't really know how to offer it to us, So definitely, like when you're getting like that mentorship and that leadership, and you get it from someone that looks like you, it goes a whole nother mile, So I definitely advocate for people to join, the coalition as well.
You know what's funny? Like, so when I was in college, they had this thing where if you had a certain amount of credits, you could be a substitute teacher. So I went to UNLV, and one of the things they used to say is, if you do substitute teaching in this, I guess the suburban neighborhood, you get $80 a day.
Okay.
But if you go into this urban neighborhood, we'll give you $120 a day. You know what I'm saying? So when you start thinking about like, okay, these teachers coming in and not knowing like how to deal with certain kids, it just kind of made me think of that. So.
Yeah, and when we have time, if I'm invited back, I really like to talk about that whole process of vetting teachers. My background is human resource, and in working with the federal government, I audited human resources departments.
Wow.
And there's a lot that, there are a lot of dead bodies in the human resources department.
Mims. Hey man, drop some pearls on us before you get out of here, man. What's something you wish you would have said that you didn't? Could you say something that you're thinking before you leave the house?
Okay, so one of the things, I'm glad you gave me this opportunity, because what I don't want to do is disparage human resources.
Yes.
It's very important.
We're just trying to find a bridge, y'all.
Yeah, and so they're essential. And so the pearl is, please don't be lulled to sleep thinking that the system has changed in any positive way. It has not.
You heard that, right? Don't be lulled to sleep. Ain't nothing changed. Same old grind. But listen here, y'all, we got to get out of here, but check this out. I do appreciate Mr. Rouse coming in, Mims Rouse coming in today and dropping some of that pearl of insight and wisdom about our young African-American men and the systems that we have to engage. Education, justice, economics, you name it. But hey, look, don't give up. Keep up the fight, y'all. One step at a time. Don't hate on us. We just trying to find a bridge, y'all, over here at Flosser Media. Just trying to share with you a little bit of our insight. Y'all have a good, blessed afternoon. And hey, this is Black Beat, and we trying to beat on it. You hear? So y'all have a great afternoon, y'all. Peace. We out.
Peace.